Welcome to the Texas Association of Counties Risk Management Poll webinar titled Preparing for Spring Storms. As Lee has mentioned, my name is Rudy Estrada. I serve as the risk control consultant mainly for the Southwest region of Texas. And joining me today is Steven Sanchez, a claims examiner with TAC. Today, we're going to walk through what counties can do to prepare for spring storms, what actions to take before, during, and after a storm event, and how to properly document damage and file a claim with TAC if needed. Spring storms can bring sudden and severe weather conditions. Much of this information in this webinar is best practices, claims industry recommended, and some common sense. The information in the webinar is not all-inclusive. This presentation covers how to understand these storms, prepare effectively prior to the storm, take safe actions during the storm, and recover safely afterward. Preparedness and response and recover will vary county by county, depending on what kind of storm the county has experienced and what resources are available. As Lee mentioned earlier, if you have questions at any time during this webinar, please use the chat feature and type your questions and we will respond. Also, Stephen and I may ask a question to the audience. Feel free to provide your answer also in the chat. Stephen will also provide insight into what the claims team looks for and how to ensure a smooth claims process. Stephen, thank you for joining me.
Good morning. Thanks, Rudy. I'm glad to be here. Spring storms can bring high winds, hail, flooding, and even some tornado activity, which we saw earlier this month in Lee County and here recently in San Saba County. So preparation and documentation is critical.
Before we get started, could we go back one slide? I failed to mention a disclaimer. This is something we put on all our TAC presentations. Again, this information is provided in this webinar is for general informational purposes only, is not intended to be legal advice. It covers topics related to storms, which include but are not limited to hail, heavy rains, thunderstorms, flooding, and the like for preparedness, mitigation, response, and resources used in addressing the weather storm. This presentation is not intended to be comprehensive. Our goal here is to raise awareness and initiate future discussions among your county officials and relevant stakeholders to enhance preparedness for potential storms and hazards that storms bring to your counties. Thank you. So today's topics, back up one second. We're going to explore the nature and risk of spring storms, practical preparation strategies, immediate safe actions during the storm and after, and then the recovery measures, but to ensure safety and resilience. So that's what we're going to talk, the sum of what we're going to cover today. So preparing the storm. As you know, spring storms vary in type and intensity, often bringing hazards like strong winds, heavy rains, hail, and tornadoes. Awareness of weather alerts and potential impact help us stay prepared and safe. Proactive preparedness, reduces the risk. So being proactive in the beginning helps. Personally, you secure your home, you gather your emergency supplies and establishing a family plan. Those are the key steps. For counties, it's a little different. So right here on this slide, common types of spring storms in Texas. So a question for the audience. What other storms might counties need to prepare for? Please feel free to enter your answers in the chat. We have thunderstorms on the screen, we have hailstorms, we have tornadoes. Yes, flash floods, hurricanes, absolutely.
Ice storms.
Yeah. Each of these present distinct challenges influenced by factors such as location, terrain, property conditions, and the level of preparedness requiring tailored safety measures to effectively reduce the risk. So we have listed the top 5 or 6 that happen in Texas here on this on the last 2 slides. So common types of spring storms in Texas. Again, these are the most common that we see in Texas, and there are others like somebody just mentioned, windstorms. And then I think Stephen and Brenda and also mentioned ice storms. Fires, very good, right? So drought brings wildfires because the drought causes them. So very good for that. And it's not a spring storm, but it's still an event that can impact the county in a very detrimental way if you're not prepared for it. Okay, thank you. So some of the key differences in storms and the response time. So here we have 3 storms that are common: hurricanes, tornadoes, flash floods. And on the left are the important things to know about these particular storms, like the warning time. Hurricanes, we know it's coming. If you're listening to the weather, they're letting you know that it's coming in a few days, and then it comes to a few hours, and we're waiting for it. Tornadoes, minutes to hours. And then flash floods, if anybody experienced any flash floods, it can happen within minutes. And then your hazards, what to expect under these 3 categories. Key preparation for these 3, and then roughly how long they last. So very important to understand the differences and responding to each particular storm. These are some of the hazards that come with these storms. Property damage is number 1. Power outage is very frequent. Flooding, depending on where the county building is located or where you live, that can be a risk. And then sometimes people forget this one: health hazards. Storms can pose health hazards. Contaminated water, you have to boil your water, disrupted medical services. And so these are all related to health hazards. You got mosquitoes that pond after the storm and things of that sort. So that's one people forget sometimes. So it's important to keep that also in mind. So one of the best pre-storm actions counties can take to strengthen their readiness for storm season is by proactively reviewing and updating their emergency operations plan. This process should ensure that all procedures reflect current risks, resources, and best practices. It's essential to identify key personnel in your county and establish reliable backup contacts to maintain continuity of operations if primary staff are unavailable. Clearly defining the roles and responsibility helps eliminate confusion during an emergency and supports a coordinated response. I have a saying for this: during an emergency is not the time to be exchanging business cards. Additionally, verifying that after-hour contact lists are accurate and accessible during that time, and timely communication when the storm occurs outside regular business hours. Taking these steps in advance enhances overall preparedness and enables a more efficient and effective response when severe weather impacts the community. So I'll ask you, I hope most of you know who your emergency coordinator is and who your go-to team is. These are things that are covered in the emergency operations plan. I'm going to stop here for a second. So far, does anybody have any questions or comments regarding this particular slide about what you're doing ahead of time? As we look at the list on the screen here, these are important things that need to be done before a storm. And if you notice the last one, take before photos. What does that mean, Stephen, to take before photos?
Well, just means, to have a good record of the condition of buildings and vehicles so that we can kind of compare and go over damages that were possibly there already and separate what was there before and after the storm. Helps document what damages were already there and helps us to figure out what we need to do to best address that damage.
Yes, taking photos of county buildings before once a year and storing them safely is helpful during the claims process for the claims department. And you can see the before and after, and it's very impactful for yourself to view the damage, the county officials, and for claims processing. So thank you, Stephen. I appreciate that. So moving on to inspecting and maintaining county property, right? Reinforcing windows and doors and clearing gutters and securing outdoor objects, inspecting roofs are essential to minimize storm damage. These measures help protect both your property, the county property, and the safety of the employees. As a best practice, it is advisable to document high value property at least once a year to take photographs and storing them securely, just as he mentioned. This documentation provides a reliable record of pre-storm conditions, which can be valuable for assessment and insurance purposes. So you're starting to see a trend here that there is a substantial work that needs to be done before a storm. And if this is done during the quiet months of the year, if you have quiet months, and done continuously, it's not a big overload, a big load on the county personnel before the storm comes. Talk about securing outdoor objects and equipment. I mean, I don't know how you, but I have seen video where the wind is so powerful that it takes items laying out in the field or in the backyard or on property and use them as projectiles and thrown them many miles, and also is cause for injury if you're not expecting that and not tied down. So securing outdoor objects, inspecting roofs, also again can help for mitigating potential injury to people. Looking at your fencing, if you have fencing that's weak, that wind will knock it out. And then exterior lighting and signage is also something to look at before a storm comes through your county. The IT folks in the room, protecting critical records and IT systems. This is very important. You want to back up your electronic data. You want to elevate equipment higher off the floor. If you have things on the floor, IT critical, elevate them, put them off the floor, 5-6 inches. Make sure your surge protection is in place. Move critical records so they don't get wet. Sometimes we put records on the low shelf or on the floor. Those need to be raised up in an area where if it floods, if that particular building or that floor floods, you can save those records and they won't get wet, especially if they're very critical. I think sometimes that's overlooked at times. And this is something that can be done once a year as you go through your emergency operations plan. So we've just talked about actions to do before a storm. And we listed things that the county government can do before a storm with property and records and IT and offices. Now we're going to discuss actions to do during a storm. What actions should you take during a storm? So proactive preparation reduces risk. And so you follow, number one is following emergency protocols. This is paramount. When a storm is imminent or actively occurring, safety must remain the top priority. And I'm going to say that over and over during the rest of this presentation, because during a storm, your safety is paramount. As you are reacting to the storm, you should not take actions that put your life in jeopardy. One of the main things to be aware of is monitor the weather. Whatever device, radio, mobile apps, whatever, from a reliable source to monitor the weather to make sure that you know where the storm is, where it's going, where it has been. Getting real-time information ensures you receive timely instructions and being in contact with your supervisors. Very important. Implement a shelter in place if you have to. If you cannot leave your county building, well, then you bunker down and you follow those evacuation procedures if you have to evacuate. And then you want to restrict access to unsafe facilities. Anything you want to add here, Stephen?
No, other than, like you said, just always emphasize that not to risk any injury to protect property, and no claim is worth someone getting hurt. Extra invoices and documentation and things like that. So safety first.
Excellent. Protecting your property if you do so. This is something that you can do right before the storm, or as a storm is on your doorstep at the county, and that's moving your equipment. If you have a county that has covered parking like this, I've seen this in Gregg County, I've seen it in Ector County, where they move law enforcement vehicles and road and bridge vehicles underneath covered parking and safely, and that helps mitigate the damage to county property, and it's undercover. Very helpful for counties. That's one less claim they have to process, right? Close and secure windows. Cover high valued equipment that will be exposed to a storm, or better yet, move the equipment. Move county vehicles to covered parking. Before a hurricane, board up windows and use sandbags to prevent water intrusion. So this is something, we had a county who did this. They had 20 vehicles that were fairly new. They moved them underneath the covered parking and started using the older vehicles to go out on patrol, knowing that a hailstorm might be coming. Very good proactive event. This is a photo of a county that has many of these particular coverings, and all the road and bridge are parked there on a daily basis. So if you have that available, a resource, please utilize it. And talk to your county officials about the potential of getting one of those in the future. So this is very important. It's essential to find a safe spot to ride out a storm, and a vehicle is not a good place to be inside of. We have stories about counties in the past who employees are in a county vehicle and said, we're going to ride out the storm in a vehicle, and that does not turn out to be safe. So very important to shelter in place in the basement of a building, not in a vehicle. So immediate actions after the storm. So this is the bigger portion of the particular what you do during a storm, after a storm. This is just as important. Let's go back one slide. So what steps should you take after the storms? If you want to put your answer in the chat, feel free as I'm talking. Taking the right steps during and after a storm is critical to safety. After a storm has passed, recovery efforts should begin with a continued focus on safety. Counties should conduct initial damage assessments to identify the hazards, such as unstable structures. Down power lines is a big one, and flooded areas before allowing access. First responders, emergency responders, and designated personnel should coordinate search and rescue operations where necessary, while also documenting damage to infrastructure and property to support recovery, planning, and potential reimbursement processes. Missy, you're absolutely right. Assess the damage. Communication with public remains critical during this phase, providing guidance on the safe reentry of roads, available resource, and reporting procedures. So this is where that emergency operations plan we talked about earlier also comes into play. We have to communicate with our employees, the county employees. We have to send the road and bridge to go and clear a road. But we also have to communicate with the public, say don't use that road. And whether that's Facebook or radio or TV, whatever social media, we need to communicate that to the public early and often, as quickly as possible. And then the county, the emergency team, whether that's road and bridge, law enforcement, as they're assessing the damage and clearing roads, that needs to be communicated to the public of where they can travel and where they shouldn't travel. Safety first. So a very important action after the storm. Then we have a status report, right? You gotta let your supervisors and coworkers know that you're okay, where you are, and what you're doing. And so search and accountability efforts should be prioritized to locate residents, county employees, and visitors, ensuring that anyone in need of assistance is identified and supported as quickly as possible. Again, I'll go back to that emergency operations plan. You got to have teams set up so you can get people to start checking in, and you know that coworkers are safe, family is safe, and those that are sheltering in place are accounted for. Very, very important to have a status report. And this is not something that takes 5 minutes. It could take an hour or longer, maybe hours, to make sure that everyone's okay after a storm. So here's a question. What do you do if power is disrupted, right? What are your choices? What are your options? There's a few listed on the screen there. However, each of those comes with a caveat. For example, look, the safe generator use, right? When power or utility services are disrupted after storms, counties should prioritize safe, clear communication and rapid stabilization of essential services. These disruptions can create immediate hazards as well as long-term public health concerns. So a structured and cautious approach is critical. First, officials should treat all down power lines as energized and dangerous, ensuring the public is warned to stay clear and report hazards immediately. If you see a down powered line, you stay away from it and report it. Access to affected areas may need to be restricted from the public until utility crews can access and secure the situation. Backup power systems such as generators should be used with caution, only in well-ventilated areas and never indoors, and to prevent carbon monoxide poisoning. So you have to take that in consideration. Maintaining communication with county residents is essential. Your PIO, your public information officer, should be conveying this information to the county citizens, to elected officials, to the emergency operations first responders. They should provide regular updates on outages, estimate when the restoration will come back. Available resources, including shelters, tell them where to go. Whether we have cooling or heating centers, depending on the type of the time of year. A special attention should be given to the vulnerable population who rely on electricity for medical equipment or other critical needs, the hospitals. Water and wastewater systems should be also evaluated. Do we have to boil? Do we have to send out a notice? That county judge can send out a notice. We have to boil water. If there's any risk to contamination or system failure, obviously boil water advisories or alternative water distribution may be necessary. So these are things to look for, right? And if you do, if you're sheltering in place and you were thinking ahead and you had all you're charging your phone, but now you don't have electricity, you got to conserve your battery devices and figure out what, flashlights ready to go. Do you have a backup battery? Is your phone fully charged? Things of that sort. So again, lots to think about when it comes to power disruption. And hopefully it only lasts for a few minutes or a few hours, but sometimes, depending on the storm severity, it can last for days. So handling debris and potential hazards. So as you're out there and you're doing the assessment of the damage, wear protective gear like gloves, boots, long sleeves, eye protection when cleaning and moving debris. Injuries often occur during the cleanup effort. Work in teams of at least two for safety purposes. Identify and avoid hazards such as broken glass, exposed nails, and unstable structures. The reason we want you to work at least in teams of two, if something happens to one of you, you twist your ankle or you get injured, then the other person can call for help. When the cleanup effort, I'll speak to road and bridge, as you're cleaning the road and you have to use a chainsaw and move brush out of the way or whatever. If you don't have a backhoe, you can get injured in that regard. And so when you're assessing damage and we're doing the debris handling and the cleanup, it's important to wear the proper, safety equipment and to work as a team. You don't want to be the one person that's working on alone and then you fall or you get injured and you cannot call for help. And that has happened. And again, that's a claim that could have been avoided if we're thinking about how we work as a team safely. Steve and I talk about this. When you have damage to a building or a roof or a piece of property in the county has a duty to mitigate that damage. Board up the broken windows and tarp damaged roofs and extract standing water, shut off water, broken pipes, so their damage doesn't get extended. For example, if you have a storm come through and you board up the windows, or you don't board up the windows, and you don't do the tarping of the roofs, and then another storm comes 2 days later, that makes the damage exacerbated. It's more damage, but it could have been avoided if we had taken the procedures of mitigating the damage by boarding up the windows, by securing a tarp to damaged roof. Stephen, you want to add to this?
Yeah, I would just add that you don't have to wait to ask us if it's okay to mitigate the damages. do cover windows, cover the roofs, do what you need to do, and keep track of invoices and any overtime or anything paid, because that is something that can be reviewed and reimbursed. But I would not wait on taking mitigated actions during or after a storm.
So you're saying the expenses that a county uses to mitigate damage uh, can be listed and sent in to reimbursement?
Yeah, that's correct. Yep. Yeah, we will help cover that, just so, I mean, the cost to avoid additional damages is covered under the policy document.
Oh, that's good to know. So speaking of assessing and documented damages, right? The most important word on this slide is documentation or documenting, and we're going to talk about how you document that. So inspecting property for damage. After the storm passed, check county buildings and property for structural damage, leaks, and hazards. And document damage for claim purposes, avoiding unsafe areas until clear. So this is what you're looking for. You're looking for water leaks, and I don't know, it may be too early for mold, but still hazards, electrical hazards, right? And you want to stay clear of unsafe areas. Stephen can speak to this, but we've had counties where there's been damage to the courthouse through the roof, and you don't want people going in there all nilly-willy just trying to look for assessing the damage. You want to plan for that, because a 2x4 may fall, or part of a tree limb is stuck and it finally gives way after it dries out. So as you identify structure damage to county buildings that are compromised, you want to do it in the safest possible way. So it has been said that a photo is worth 1,000 words. Take clear multiple photos of the damage, some close up and some from a distance. You may know your county property, however, others have never seen it. They need to orient themselves on what they're looking at. The better the pictures, the better the damage is understood, the smoother the claim process. So the pictures you send to claims should be clear and close up of the specific damage, and then pulled out a little bit. So that way the claims department or county elected officials, whoever's looking at the photo, gets a good idea of what they're looking at and what the damage is. I'll let you speak a little bit more about this, Stephen.
Yeah, so like you were saying, the best available description of the damages is what's very helpful for us. And photos can be worth 1,000 words, and some of them can be worth not a single word. So getting, proper documentation, if possible, and any photos are always helpful.
So, Stephen, I'm going to hand this portion over to you and let you speak a little bit. I've been talking for quite a bit of time, and I'll let the audience hear your voice for a little bit.
All right, thank you, Rudy. So to kind of start the claims process, now that the storms happened, and we're kind of assessing what's going on, like I said just a while ago, the best available description of the damaged property is what's best. Obviously, with storms like this, when it's a large storm and a lot of things have been damaged, we're not going to know all of the property, buildings, autos, all that. We won't know everything all at once, but getting the claim started is the best practice. So we also would need, obviously, location of any buildings that you know of at the time and the date and time that it's lost. We can figure that out with storms. We try to be proactive when we know that a storm's coming through our areas, and we will check in on counties after the storms just to try to get a beat on if there's any damages and what we're kind of looking for. So obviously, building addresses, serial numbers for any mobile equipment, VINs for vehicles, all of that stuff, so that we can kind of start to assess what we need to do and how we're going to get the damages looked at to move the claim along and get the county made whole as quickly as possible. And obviously, like we spoke about earlier too, if we could separate any pre-existing damage that might have been there before the storm rolled through, that would also help us get the claim moving and this process started, so that everything can go as smoothly as possible. I'm giving this what's on the slide here. Some of you may be familiar with, but it's basically just an Excel spreadsheet. But what we use this for is to keep track of a large list of county vehicles that are damaged in hailstorms. It could be in floods, anything, but this is just to help keep track of everything in one located area. What we'll do, we can send this out to you if you call or email us and say, hey, I have 10, 20, 30 vehicles that were damaged in a hail or flood. We will get this spreadsheet set up for you and sent out to you and keep track of the claim number, the VIN number of the vehicle. It's not all shown on here, but there are a couple other cells of information where we can talk about if it's a total loss, how much has been paid, how much the appraiser is. We just ask that you do try to fill it out with the most accurate information. And the one of the most important things other than the vehicle information is the point of contact that we'll need to arrange the inspections for these vehicles. The quickest way for something to kind of fail is if we don't know who's in charge of the information. If we can get one person that we go to that has all the access to the information and we just silo it to that person, it makes it go so much quicker when we don't know, or when we know who we're supposed to contact and you know who you're supposed to contact as well. So this spreadsheet is really helpful in a lot of ways. And like I said, if you aren't familiar with it or if you haven't seen it, you can reach out to myself, any of the claims examinators in your region, or the ITSL or Victoria with the customer service specialist. They can get this to you so that you have it on hand, and you can send that out to all your departments too, so that we can kind of get everything in all at once.
Stephen, so what if we have a claim and then we find a piece of property like 2 weeks, or another building like a week later, or we forgot about a vehicle? Do I have to have all the information at one time, or can I come back and give you that information later to the spreadsheet?
Yeah, that can be. We get hail claims from 2 years out sometimes, so it doesn't have to be right away. Obviously, it's preferred. Obviously, sometimes too, when you're dealing with a lot of different departments, things get lost and things like that. So you can always let us know down the road. It doesn't have to be immediate. You do not have to wait to get all the damages assessed before starting a claim either. We can start a claim for a building and be adding it, months down the road. Same thing for APD as far as auto physical damage. We can get one claim in, and within 2, 3, 4 weeks, that list grows to 30. So it does not have to be within that day, 24 hours, or even a week. You can continuously send in stuff to be evaluated to be covered under that claim.
Thank you.
So next slide there. So this is kind of pretty much the same thing. Once you report a claim to us, we'll pretty much know what the date of loss is when a storm comes through, but we will need that information as far as also what the description of what happened, how it was actually damaged. That's a little bit more specific to property claims. With the vehicle, hail damage hits the car, breaks it. With property, if hail comes through, breaks a window, flood, there's a lot of different aspects that could happen with that too. So we'll just need description of what actually happened so we can assess and see how the coverage will be applied. And then obviously to location of the damage. And that could be an address for the property or location as far as on a vehicle. Where was the damage located? Some vehicles will be damaged in multiple panels and the windshield's cracked. That's not safely drivable anymore. You can go ahead and get that windshield replaced. Save that invoice, obviously, and send it in to us. That way there's no downtime with that vehicle. There's a couple of dents on it that can still be driven safely, but we can get that windshield replaced a lot quicker than doing those repairs, and we can get the damages assessed at a later time. And again, like this last one says here, contact information, so we know who to address any questions with or give any updates to.
Stephen, when's the best time to give you those photos that we've taken? When do we give you? How do we email those?
You can email them to us directly. You can send it in when you send the claim in. Or if it's a large batch of photos, we can send in a OneDrive link that you can upload all that to. All that I would say is, obviously we need to make sure that we classify each photo with the specific vehicle. We can't just have a bunch of photos of Tahoes come in and we don't know what goes to what. So
I
you
see.
can email those in, or you can upload them into send them in when you do the loss report. And here again, with some of the claims documentation that we would need for building purposes, contents that were damaged in the storm, if there was some type of flood, anything that was damaged, anything that was on the floor, we would just need an inventory list so that we can review that and take the proper steps to get it covered. Repair estimate is again with the auto vehicles. If there is damage to an auto vehicle, on scheduled vehicle, you do not have to wait for us to come look at it. If you have a body shop or a PDR specialist in the area that's willing to come out and look at those, you can start getting them looked at and the repairs going, just as long as we have proper photos and an estimate so that we can review. That's more than okay. You can start those estimates going and repairs going, so you do not have any downtime on those vehicles. If you want somebody to go out there, we can set that up as well. So it's just a matter of letting us know what's more convenient for you. That's what we're going to do. And the emergency repair invoices, like I said, here goes to mitigating damages on property, covering roofs, boarding up any windows, making emergency plumbing, repairs. Keep those invoices because they can be reviewed to be reimbursed. Same thing with the autos. If you have to replace a couple windshields, you don't have to wait to ask us if you can do that. That's going to be covered on these hail claims. Get them replaced, save the invoices, and we can get those addressed towards the end once repairs are complete.
Did you say overtime is covered in that, or a portion?
If there's labor if there's labor that has to be used for these mitigation purposes outside of hours and things like that, you can send those in for us to review for possible reimbursement. Yes.
Thank you.
And this next slide kind of goes along to helping us get this claim moving and keeping everything smoothly. Once we send somebody out there to review the vehicles or the property damages, we just want to make sure that the facility, the building itself is obviously safe but accessible for us to review those damages. Any of the cars that we have, we need to make sure that we know exactly where they're going to be so that when we send somebody out there, they're able to look at those vehicles and get us the best possible report in a timely manner. And if you have any questions, just probably, get a hold of us. And if anything needs to be added, you can just reach out to us. And here's just a list of some common mistakes that we see that we'd like to avoid to, keep these claims moving. Obviously, don't wait too long to file a claim. With that being said, obviously, some vehicles you can't see, some damages may not be seen right away either. That's understandable. But if you know that there is damage, don't wait to file a claim with us. Let us know immediately that Road and Bridge says they have vehicles, or Sheriff's County says they have vehicles. That way we can start a claim going and we can start to be proactive and not reactive on these type of things. If you are going to make those emergency repairs, just make sure that there's some documentation, photos of that damage before repairing, replacing, or doing anything of that matter. That way we can properly review it for any type of reimbursement. And again, along with that, if you do any damage repair on it, try to save as much as you can that's safely and feasible to save. That way, again, we can look at that and see if there's any additional coverage that we can extend. And that last one, like we've said here a couple of times, we want to make sure that any damage, any mitigation that can be safely done is done. If you do have any questions about that, you can always reach out to myself, Rudy, or anybody here at TAC to kind of help you with that. But you'll never be wrong in trying to mitigate damages after a storm unless it's just completely unsafe to do so.
Does anybody have any questions with regards to claims or processing claims that you're brave enough to ask on this webinar? Maybe it's someone's thinking the exact same question that you have for Stephen. No? Okay.
If you do, I'm always available for emails or calls if you have any questions separately. Oh, the
so
one
we have a
link
question.
drive. Yeah, Mary, yes, you can. And if you needed that one, you could just give us a call and say, hey, I need a drive. We can send that over to you and you can upload directly to it.
Okay. So as we know, spring storms are unpredictable, but the key is preparation, prompt action, and proper documentation. This can significantly reduce operational disruption and financial impact for the counties. If you not prepared, then you're behind the 8 ball. These are the risk control consultants for Texas. So you have Aquatree there is Northwest, that's Nick, and down south, Southwest is me. Isaac is your Southeast, and then Northeast is Harold Hall. There's our phone numbers. When it comes to, if you want us to inspect the property before a storm, anytime you want a property survey, we can do that for you. So those are the 4 for the risk control consultants. And then Stephen.
And this is your map for your claims examiners. All you should probably be familiar with who your regional claims examiner is. As you see here, me and my twin brother are the West Texas claims regional. So if you have any questions there in the West, email me, call me. My information is right there. We have Miss Michaela Kaiser on the Northeast and Tanya Davis on the Southeast. And the overall property and auto property physical damage supervisor there, who I'm sure you guys are all familiar with, is Brett Anderson. So if you have any claims related questions, all 5 of us are capable of answering any questions. So you can reach out to us at any time. If you have a claim that you'd like to submit, same thing, you can give us a shout, email us, call us, or just go to the website and file a claim that way.
Again, as Lee mentioned, this will be available to review. So if you don't write down these numbers, once it's emailed to you, you can look at it at your leisure and pull the emails and the phone numbers for the claims examiners, for the risk control consultants. But if you, like Stephen said earlier, if you do have any questions, pick up the phone and call. That's what we're here for. And we'll guide you along the way, hopefully before the storm for preparations, emergency operations planning, and then after the storm for the claim process. That concludes our webinar for spring storms. On behalf of Steve and Lee, thank you for joining us today. If you have any questions, always feel free to reach out for TAC. We are a resource for you. It is webinars like this and your participation that instill dialogue in the counties on emergency operations plan to mitigate, to prepare for, and to respond to storms. And if it's done over the course of a year, it's much easier than trying to do it 36 hours before a storm. So anyway, thank you for your time and attention. It has been our honor and pleasure to present this webinar to you. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.